It's that time of year again as we sit just a few days away from the MLB winter meeting starting, where we begin to see what the Mariners' plan is this offseason. And as Joe and I noted in our most recent episode of the podcast, the Mariners kind of seem behind schedule. They haven't really made any major moves yet, at least as of recording this video. And it feels like something has got to happen, and it's got to happen relatively soon. And because of that, there was an article that was written by Ken Rosenthal talking about what he is hearing around the MLB right now that kind of revealed what the Mariners do plan to do this offseason. And I'll be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this because there's some interesting stuff in this article, some good and some mostly bad. Now, I would like to point out this was not said by Dipoto or by Hollander. This is from Ken Rosenthal, so a bit of an outside source. So do with that as you will. When we've done these videos in the past, it's always been the Dipoto reveals the Mariners' offseason plan, etc., blah, blah, blah. This was not. So let's take a look at Rosenthal's article. Now, before we get into the part about the Mariners, I do want to discuss what he had to say about the infield market as a whole, specifically about Alex Bregman and Willy Adames. As he's writing in here, the Houston Astros are continuing their efforts to re-sign Bregman while also setting up contingencies. The team is staying in contact with Adames and has expressed interest in another free agent, Jorge Polanco, as a fallback option. Jorge Polanco at third base? The defense that we saw out of Jorge Polanco last year, they want to put at third base. I mean, the thing is if they do that, it'll probably work. Because it's the Astros and everything always works out for them. Everything always goes their way. But just reading that made me laugh. The fact that the Astros are looking to sign Jorge Polanco to play third base. That is hilarious. But again, it is noted here, Bregman and Willy Adames both are kind of strongly considered third basemen in this market. Specifically, Willy Adames is the interesting one. I know people are mad at the way I say Adames. I'm going to keep saying it, Willy Adames. He is being seen by a lot of teams as being a third baseman in this free agent market, which is very, very strange. He's one of the best bats on the market in 2024-2025 free agency. And the fact that teams are not necessarily looking at him as a shortstop, but as a third baseman, makes him a little bit more interesting to the Mariners. Now, we know the Mariners are never going to go that high to sign Willy Adames because he's projected to make like upwards of $25+ million a year, I would assume. At least upwards of $20 million a year, which would be the entire Mariners budget from what we've heard from Adam Jude. And so, as we look a little bit further into this article and they start to talk about the Mariners, just keep that in mind. The very start to talking about the Mariners was this quote here from Ken Rosenthal. After trading for Carlos Santana and Justin Turner the past two deadlines, the Seattle Mariners want to acquire that type of veteran presence for an entire season, not just the final 2 months. Santana will play next season at 39, Turner at 40. Both, however, are still above average offensive players, and Santana just won his first Gold Glove at first base. Pete Alonso or Christian Walker would better fill the Mariners' need at that position, but it would be an upset if Seattle emerged as the high bidder for either. Now, that part's not really any new information. We know the Mariners have been interested in Santana and Turner, and we know they would prefer to bring one of those guys back, and I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion at this point that one of those two will be the first baseman for the Mariners in 2025. However, the mention of Pete Alonso and Christian Walker here, I don't know if you guys saw it, and it was MLB Scoops on Twitter, who's honestly not credible at all, but he did say the Mariners were in contact with Pete Alonso, which I feel like is probably unlikely because they know that he is out of their price range, but nonetheless, they might have been in contact with Pete Alonso. Walker or Alonso, they're not happening for the Mariners, and as we scroll a little bit further down into what Rosenthal has to say here, you might just be worried about what else the Mariners are going to do this offseason. The Mariners also are looking to upgrade at third base, believing they are positioned to handle second base internally with Dylan Moore, Ryan Bliss, and at some point next season, Cole Young, the 21st overall pick in the 2022 draft. I'm sorry. You're going to roll into next season with Ryan Bliss and Dylan Moore as your second base tandem. I find it hard to believe that a team that is, looking to make it back to the playoffs, a team that needs to get these positions right this year, because frankly, if they don't, I would assume that a lot of the front office might be fired. And you're going to roll with Dylan Moore, who was a pain in my eyes to watch this year. I know he was good. And Ryan Bliss, who I think he deserves a starting chance. I just don't think it's with the Seattle Mariners. And wait for Cole Young. I find it incredibly hard But of course, the thing is that the fact that Rosenthal is saying, believing they are positioned to handle second base internally, means that he's probably heard this. He's probably heard that the Mariners believe they are positioned with the players that are in-house to man second base, meaning that their real focus is going to be third base. Now, I don't disagree that there's not a whole lot of options out there for second base this offseason that you haven't already had. Like, again, Jorge Polanco, Adam Frazier, and Colton Wong are all free agents. We can go get one of them. That's worked out really well. I mean, I guess the positive way to look at it is Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss, they can't be any worse than what we've gotten out of the last few years, right? Let's dive into their numbers real quick. So at the major league level last year in 33 games, Ryan Bliss hit 222, 290, 397, good for a 687 OPS. He did hit 2 home runs, stole 5 bags, struck out 22 times in his time in the big leagues in 71 plate appearances. That is good for an alarming 31% strikeout rate, which is very, very high compared to the league average of 22.6%. He was hitting the ball pretty hard at 48.8% hard hit percentage, but overall, Ryan Bliss just did not really show up in 2024, and understandably so. He was coming out of the minor leagues. Obviously, 33 games, there's not a whole lot to look at with his savant page here. His hard hit percentage, his launch angle sweet spot, and his chase rate were all pretty good, and obviously he was relatively fast, but otherwise, although he was not qualified, you can see that a lot of his numbers are pretty blue. Dylan Moore was somebody that I was relatively hard on in 2024. He put up a 2.2 WAR in 135 games, 441 plate appearances, hitting 201, 320, 367, good for a 104 OPS plus. He did hit 10 homers with 42 RBI. He did steal 32 bags. There's a big value there in how many bags Dylan Moore was able to steal in 2024, and obviously he did win a Gold Glove. He strikes out at an above league average pace, in fact, well above league average at 29.8%, but he also walks at an above average pace at 10.8%. He doesn't hit the ball necessarily all that hard, below the league average by about 1%. And his savant page is really not that crazy. He walks a lot, his chase rate is pretty good in the 99th percentile, and his launch angle sweet spot in the 84th percentile, but a lot of blue on this page. His arm strength isn't very good as well, which is actually kind of surprising. Sprint speed, all right for Dylan Moore in 2024. As you can see, all of his power is to the pull side, which we kind of know with Dylan Moore and that swing that he has. You look at those guys, and that doesn't necessarily scream a really a good way to fix a position, right? Between Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss, but apparently that is what the Mariners are planning to do at second base. Now, as for what they're planning to do at third base, because it sounds like they are going to be trying to upgrade, what does that mean? Does that mean they're going out and trying to get Jordan Westburg? Does that mean they're going out and trying to sign Alex Bregman? And the most common one has been Alec Boehm, and of course, he is mentioned here by Ken Rosenthal. Rosenthal says the Philadelphia Phillies' Alec Boehm, an obvious target, faded after a monster April, batting .258 with a .713 OPS. Teams view him as a good but not great player. Plus, Boehm stands to earn a projected $8.1 million in arbitration, with only one more year of club control remaining after that. The hard part with Alec Boehm is, again, he's owed $8.1 million, which, if the Mariners' $16 million budget is true, that eats up half of their payroll going into 2025, when frankly this team just needs quite a bit more. If you sign Alec Boehm and Justin Turner, you're done for the offseason. That's $16 million right there. So sure, I think in a vacuum, going for Alec Boehm makes sense at $8.1 million, but if you're able to offset the cost even a little bit, that would obviously be, in my opinion, the best way to go about something like this. But you don't really have a guy out there to trade for. I don't know. It's a very weird position to talk about third base because there are some really good options. Again, we've talked about Alex Bregman. Willie Adames is another guy we've talked about. Jordan Westburg. Alec Boehm, not Alex, goodness, is not necessarily one of those good options, and he's making a decent chunk of change. Nolan Arenado, etc. is another guy who's making a lot of money but isn't that good. I don't know. Maybe if you just would have kept Gino, this wouldn't have happened. We're only a few days away from the winter meetings. There's so much going on right now with the Mariners and in baseball as a whole, but also there's so little going on with the Mariners at this point. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the next few months pan out. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.